The woods behind Mill Creek had always been a place of whispered stories, hunters who vanished, old graves hidden under roots, and a silence that pressed too heavy on the chest. On the night the call came in, Officer Daniel Rourke didn't think about those stories. He thought about his K-9, Shadow, pulling hard on the leash, ears pricked as if hearing something Daniel couldn't. The radio crackled, a missing person case, routine on the surface. But when Shadow stopped at the tree line and refused to move until Daniel unclipped the leash, the officer's life and the quiet town of Mill Creek would never be the same again. If you're drawn to stories that stay with you long after they end, where truth hides in silence and shadows, consider following along. It helps more than you know. The gravel under Daniel's boots shifted as he adjusted the flashlight in his hand. The beam cut a narrow slice through the September night, catching motes of fog and the restless sway of branches. Shadow's tail was stiff, his body low, ears twitching. The dog had been trained for narcotics, for tracking fugitives, for finding the faintest human trace. But this wasn't the disciplined alert Daniel had seen in the academy drills or on the job. This was primal, urgent, easy, Daniel murmured, voice low. Shadow tugged once, sharp, a jolt up Daniel's arm. Then another. The call had come an hour earlier. Missing woman. 32. Left home on foot after an argument. Never came back. Routine, except for the edge in the dispatcher's tone. Mill Creek had its share of drunks and lost kids, but something in the voice on the radio had carried weight. Daniel had been on the force 6 years, long enough to know when to listen to instinct, his own and his dog's. He let Shadow pull him into the tree line. The sound of the small town, distant car engines, a dog barking 2 streets over, dropped away. The woods swallowed noise. Daniel's light brushed over trunks slick with moss, roots snaking out like veins. He thought of the woman, Leah Harker. The dispatcher had said, walking barefoot, drunk, maybe angry, into this mess of trees. The forest didn't forgive mistakes. Shadow paused, nose pressed to the ground, then lifted his head, nostrils flaring. His growl rumbled low. "What is it, boy?" The dog bolted forward. Daniel let the leash slide, boots crunching, heart thudding. His radio hissed at his belt. He ignored it. The world had shrunk to the beam of light. The Panda's K-9, the damp earth giving way under his weight. They pushed deeper until the ground dipped, the air colder. Daniel slowed, aware of his breath, the smell of wet leaves sharp at his nose. Shadow stopped at a clearing, an unnatural hollow, like the trees had been away from something. His hackles rose. Daniel's light caught it. A torn scarf, snagged on a branch. Pale fabric, fluttering weakly. Leah's? Daniel crouched, touched the edge. It was damp but not soaked. Dropped recently. His stomach tightened. The woods pressed in. He could feel it, the stillness that wasn't empty but watching. Behind him, branches cracked. Not Shadow, someone heavier. Daniel rose, hand near his holster, light cutting through the dark. Who's there? No answer. Just silence, thick and swallowing. Shadow barked once, sharp, echoing. Then movement. A figure stepped from the trees. Daniel tense, gun drawn before thought caught up. "Easy, Rourke." The voice was familiar. Sheriff Tom Callahan raised a hand, flashlight in the other. His lined face was pale in the beam, eyes narrowed against the light. Daniel lowered the weapon, jaw tight. "Jesus, Sheriff. You don't sneak up on someone out here." "Wasn't sneaking. You weren't answering your radio." Daniel glanced down. The device hissed faintly, the dispatcher's voice breaking through static. He must have knocked the dial. Shadow circled, still on edge. Callahan's gaze flicked to the scarf. "You found something." Daniel nodded. "Could be Leah's." The sheriff's eyes lingered, unreadable. Then he stepped closer, crouched, touched the fabric with a gloved hand. His jaw worked, muscles tight. "We'll mark it. Keep looking." But his voice carried a note Daniel hadn't heard before, a hesitation, almost a reluctance. Shadow pulled again, deeper into the woods. Daniel straightened, scanning Callahan's face. "You coming?" The sheriff hesitated a fraction too long before nodding. "Lead the way." The deeper they went, the heavier the woods felt. Roots tangled like bones, Branches clawed at uniforms. Daniel's beam kept cutting across the sheriff's face. Jaw clenched, eyes darting not just for clues, but as if expecting something he didn't want to see. "Sheriff," Daniel said quietly, "you know something you're not telling me?" Callahan didn't answer right away. His breath steamed in the cold air. Finally, "I've lived here long enough. Folks vanish in these woods, Rourke. Some we find, some we don't. That's supposed to help me sleep at night?" A shadow of a smile, bitter. "You'll learn." Daniel let it sit. He'd heard the stories. Hunters missing, boot prints that ended mid-trail. But hearing the sheriff say it, flat and unflinching, chilled him more than campfire gossip ever had. Shadow froze again. Daniel's light fell on the ground ahead, a depression in the soil. Fresh, like something heavy had been dragged. His heart kicked. He followed the trail with the beam, each mark pulling him further. The sheriff swore softly. The drag marks ended at a mound. Earth piled rough, leaves scattered clumsily over it. Daniel's breath caught. A shallow grave. Shadow whined, pawing the edge. Daniel dropped to his knees, brushed aside leaves, dirt cold under his fingers. He uncovered fabric first, dark, torn. Then skin, pale, cold. Not Leah Harker. Someone else. A man. Daniel's stomach dropped. The features were slack, but the bruises were clear. Rope burns at the wrists. The stench of decay rising now that the covering was broken. "Jesus Christ," Daniel whispered. Callahan's face was stone. No shock, no stumble back. Just a grimness too practiced. Daniel looked up sharply. "You knew." The sheriff didn't answer. Instead, he turned, scanning the woods, as if expecting the dark itself to close in. "Radio it in," Callahan said. His tone was clipped final. Daniel rose slowly, eyes never leaving him. "And tell them what? That we got one missing woman and one dead man buried in your woods." The sheriff's jaw clenched. His gaze met Daniel's, something dangerous flickering there. "Careful, Rourke." The silence stretched, heavy with more than the forest. Shadow growled, a low warning. And in that sound, Daniel understood. This was no accident, no simple missing person case. The woods weren't just hiding secrets. Someone had been burying them. The forest swallowed time. Minutes bled into hours, and the weight of discovery pressed like damp earth against Officer Daniel Rourke's chest. He'd seen death before, accidents on the highway, overdoses in squalid apartments. But this was different. A man buried like a discarded secret in the sheriff's woods, and the sheriff standing over him like it was nothing. The radio buzzed faintly at Daniel's hip. Dispatch calling, voices thin with static. He ignored it. Shadow prowled the edges of the mound, hackles still raised, growl vibrating deep. The dog's instincts rarely failed, and tonight they screamed louder than the crickets. Daniel forced himself to speak. "Who is he?" Callahan didn't flinch. "Doesn't matter now. He's dead." "Bullshit." Daniel's voice was sharper than he intended, cutting through the mist curling at their knees. "You've seen him before. Don't tell me you haven't." The sheriff's flashlight beam wavered, brushing over the corpse's bruised throat, the dirt-crusted rope burns. His face betrayed nothing, but his silence screamed loud enough. Daniel stepped closer. "You knew he was out here. You brought me to him." "Careful what you're implying, son." Daniel wasn't Callahan's son. That word was a leash, and Daniel had never liked leashes. His hand hovered near the radio, the urge to call it in raw, but something in the sheriff's eyes stopped him. Not fear, not guilt, calculation. Shadow barked suddenly, sharp and fast. His body angled to the tree lean, ears pricked. Daniel swung his light. Branches shifted, a flash of movement. "Someone's there," Daniel hissed. The sheriff raised his weapon, but Daniel noticed a hesitation. The beat too long before his finger rested on the trigger. Whoever was watching wasn't news to him. The underbrush snapped, footsteps retreating fast. Shadow lunged, leash taut, teeth bared. Daniel didn't wait for permission. "Track." The dog bolted, dragging Daniel into a sprint, his flashlight jerking over trunks and brambles. The sheriff's voice barked behind them. Something clipped angry, but Daniel didn't stop. The chase carved a brutal path. Branches slapped Daniel's arms. Roots snatched at his boots. Shadow stayed true. Nose down, muscles coiled with intent. Then light, faint, unnatural. Not moonlight. A lantern glow pulsing through the trees. Daniel slowed, breath ragged, crouching behind a fallen log. Shadow froze beside him, body vibrating with tension. The glow came from a cabin. Small, rot-eaten boards, roof sagging under moss. A place that shouldn't still stand. Through the cracks in the walls, Daniel saw it. Movement. Shadows shifting inside. He crept closer, heart hammering. Shadow slunk low, silent now. A predator's patience his frame. Through a grimy window, Daniel's beam caught a glimpse. A woman, Leah Harker, alive, her face pale, streaked with dirt, eyes wild as she tugged against bindings at her wrists. Daniel's chest surged. Relief, rage, urgency all tangled. He stepped forward. A click behind him froze the air. Drop the gun, Rourke. Callahan's voice. Low, cold. Daniel turned. Slow, rage flaring hot. The sheriff stood with his weapon steady. Lantern light etching deep lines in his weathered face. You knew, Daniel said, voice raw. You knew she was here. Didn't want you finding her this way. This way. Daniel's laugh was bitter, sharp. Bound in a cabin, next to a shallow grave. The sheriff's jaw tightened. You don't understand what's at play here. Then make me understand. A pause. The woods leaned in, listening. Finally, Callahan spoke, each word gravel. This town has rot in its bones, Rourke. Men who do things in the dark. Old debts, old sins. I try to bury it. Keep it quiet. Safer that way. Safer for who? The sheriff's eyes flicked toward the cabin. She wasn't supposed to get caught up in it. None of them were. Daniel's grip on his weapon tightened, but he didn't lower it. Shadow growled, the sound a steady threat. You're covering for someone, Daniel said. Who? Callahan's silence was answer enough. From the cabin came a muffled cry. Leah, desperate. That sound shattered Daniel's restraint. He moved fast, swinging his weapon toward the sheriff. Shadow lunged at the same time, a blur of muscle and teeth. Callahan cursed, stumbled back, gunshot cracking the night. Bark exploded from a tree inches from Daniel's head. Shadow clamped onto the sheriff's arm, tearing fabric and flesh. Callahan roared, striking at the dog, but Shadow's fury was unrelenting. Daniel kicked the sheriff's weapon away, sent it skidding into leaves. He pressed his own gun to the man's chest. Give me one reason not to end this right now. The sheriff's breathing was ragged, eyes burning with something between defiance and desperation. Blood ran down his arm where Shadow's teeth had torn. Because, Callahan rasped, I'm the only one who knows how deep this goes. Kill me, and you'll never find the rest. The rest? Daniel's stomach turned. How many more? Behind them, the cabin door rattled. Leah's voice breaking through the night. Help, please. Daniel's decision carved itself in his chest. He yanked the sheriff up by his collar, shoving him forward. You're going to untie her. Now. They crossed the clearing, lantern light spilling sickly over warped boards. Daniel's eyes scanned every shadow, finger never leaving the trigger. Shadow stayed close, muzzle bloody, growl low and constant. Inside, the cabin reeked of mildew and fear. Leah sat on the floor, wrists bound to an iron loop in the wall. Her eyes widened at the sight of the sheriff, terror sparking recognition. You, she whispered. Daniel's gut clenched. He barked at Callahan. Untie her. The sheriff hesitated, then crouched, fingers working the knots. His injured arm trembled. Leah flinched with every brush of his hand. When the rope fell, she scrambled to Daniel, clutching his sleeve, breath ragged sobs. He said he'd kill me. Said no one would believe me. Daniel's throat burned. He steadied her with one arm, gun trained on Callahan with the other. Why her? Daniel demanded. Why Leah? Callahan sank back against the wall, face pale, sweat streaking grime. Because she saw something she wasn't supposed to. Same as him. He jerked his chin toward the woods, toward the buried corpse. Leah shook her head violently. No, I didn't see anything. I was just walking. Walking where you shouldn't have, Callahan cut in, voice fraying. There are places in these woods that don't forgive trespass. Daniel's patience snapped. Enough riddles. Names. Who's behind this? Callahan's lips curled, half sneer, half surrender. You think I'm the worst of it? I'm the janitor. Rourke. I clean up. I bury the mess. The real men, they're untouchable. The truth landed like ice water. The sheriff wasn't the architect. He was a cover. Daniel's mind raced. Who else? Town council? Businessmen? The church elders who ran Mill Creek? Like a fiefdom? Leah clung tighter. He's lying. He has to be lying. But Daniel knew he wasn't. Before he could press further, headlights slashed through the trees. Engines growled. More than one. Daniel spun toward the window. Trucks. 3 of them. Men spilling out, silhouettes armed. Their lanterns swung, beams slicing through fog. Callahan's bitter smile confirmed it. Too late. Shadow barked, a warning like thunder. Daniel's heart slammed. They were boxed in. Leah's nails dug into his arm. What do we do? The answer came raw, instinctual. He chambered around, voice steady though his blood ran cold. We survive. Engines rumbled outside the cabin, headlights searing through the slats. The forest no longer felt empty. It pulsed with the heavy presence of men who belonged to the dark. Daniel Rourke steadied his grip on the pistol. Leah pressed against his side, shadow low and bristling at the door. He counted the beams. 3 trucks. At least 6 men, maybe more, armed. They hadn't come to negotiate. Stay down, he whispered to Leah. She nodded, trembling, eyes glass bright. The sheriff chuckled from where he slumped against the wall, his voice thin, but edged with satisfaction. Told you, Rourke. You don't understand what you're standing in. These woods don't let outsiders walk out alive. Daniel pressed the barrel of his gun against Callahan's chest. Then you're going out there first. The sheriff's laugh broke into a cough, blood speckling his lip. Still, he shook his head. You won't make it 50 feet. These men, they're older than my badge. Older than me. The words rang with something heavier than metaphor. Daniel shoved him forward. Move. Outside, footsteps crunch and sink, boots dragging on gravel and soil. A voice barked orders, low and commanding. Spread out. No one leaves that cabin. Daniel shoved Leah toward the far corner, crouched low. Stay with Shadow. Don't move until I say. Her whisper cut like glass. You'll get killed. He looked at her, the fear in her eyes, the rope burns on her wrists. A raw resolve hardened in him. Not tonight. He pushed Callahan through the door. The sheriff stumbled into the lantern wash, his bloodied sleeve glaring in the artificial light. The men outside froze, guns trained, but none fired. One stepped forward. A broad figure, face obscured by a cap, voice deep with authority. Tom, you were supposed to clean this up. Callahan's reply cracked in the night. Got complicated. The man's gaze shifted, shadowing toward the cabin. Daniel ducked back, pulse pounding. He had seconds. Through the wall's crack, he saw the leader lift a hand, 2 fingers twitching. An execution order. Now, Daniel hissed. He kicked the lantern across the floor. Glass shattered, flame bursting. Smoke and light exploded as he shoved Leah and Shadow toward the back wall. The dog barked furiously, teeth snapping. Leah coughed, eyes wide as Daniel smashed his boot against rotted boards until they gave a jagged hole opening into the trees. Go! Leah scrambled through, Shadow right behind, fur brushing dirt and bark. Gunfire ripped the cabin front. Bullets tore splinters from the walls, firelight strobing their path. Daniel shoved Callahan last, not out of mercy but leverage. He needed the sheriff alive, for now. They tumbled into the dark, branches clawing, smoke trailing. Shadows surged ahead, guiding them through the maze. Behind, voices shouted, beams of flashlights cutting like blades. They ran until breath tore from their throats. The forest thickened, pine and oak crowding close, roots twisting underfoot. Leah stumbled, Daniel catching her by the elbow, dragging her forward. Keep moving. Callahan staggered, blood dripping, groaning. You can't outrun them. They know these woods like their own skin. Then you're leading us out, Daniel snarled, shoving him ahead with the muzzle of his gun. For the first time, the sheriff's bravado cracked. His shoulders slumped and he muttered, "You don't know what you're asking." "Try me." They pushed deeper until the trees parted, revealing a clearing Daniel hadn't expected. A wide pit yawned the earth, ringed by half-buried stones. Moonlight revealed shapes in the soil. Wooden crosses, makeshift markers. Leah's breath caught. A sob strangled in her throat. "Oh my God!" The graveyard stretched wider than the beam of Daniel's flashlight. Dozens of mounds. Hundreds, maybe. Too many to be accidents. Too many to be forgotten. Shadow whined low, tail tucked. Daniel turned to Callahan, rage boiling. "How many?" The sheriff's face was ghost white in the moonlight. His voice came hollow. "I stopped counting years ago." Gunfire cracked behind them. Closer now. Men shouting. The hunt tightening. Leah clutched Daniel's sleeve. "We can't stay here." He forced himself to tear his eyes from the graves. Later. The dead would demand reckoning later. "Which way out?" he barked at Callahan. The sheriff's gaze darted, weighing options. Finally, he lifted a trembling hand. "Old logging road. East." Daniel shoved him forward. They ran. The road appeared like a scar in the trees. Wide enough for trucks once, now overgrown with weeds. The moon hung sharp and cold overhead, but headlights cut the road ahead. Another truck. Waiting. Daniel skidded to a halt, dragging Leah behind cover. Shadow bristled at his side. Callahan bent double, coughing blood, muttering curses. The men closed from behind, voices echoing down the road. Trapped. Daniel's mind raced, sweat cold on his temple. One gun, half a magazine. A civilian at his side. A sheriff he couldn't trust. Leah's whisper was raw. "We're dead." "No," Daniel said, steady even as his pulse hammered. "Not while I'm breathing." The truck ahead rumbled, engine idle. A man stepped out. Tall, expensive coat, face clean-shaven, composed. Not the kind of brute Daniel expected. His voice carried calm authority. "Officer Rourke, you wandered into matters far above your badge." Daniel raised his gun. "Drop your weapon." The man smiled faintly. "Do you know who funds your department? Who signs your sheriff's paycheck? You've been working for us without even knowing it." The betrayal cut deeper than the night air. Daniel's eyes flicked to Callahan. The sheriff looked away. The man continued, voice smooth. "Give us the girl and you walk away. Quiet. No paperwork. No graves with your name on them." Leah's fingers dug into Daniel's arm, desperation shaking her voice. "Don't you dare." Shadow growled, low and lethal. Daniel's choice crystallized sharp as glass. He leveled his gun, not at the stranger, but at Callahan. The sheriff froze. "End it," Daniel said, voice steel. "Tell me the names, or you die here first." The men behind them shouted. Closing in, Callahan's face twisted, torn between survival and loyalty to shadows. Finally, he broke. Words spilled ragged. Names. Faces. The councilman. The mill owner. The pastor who preached Sundays while burying sins on weekdays. A network rooted so deep in Mill Creek soil it seemed older than the trees. The stranger's composure cracked. Just a flicker, but enough. Daniel fired. The bullet took the lantern in the stranger's hand. Fire erupted, light blinding, shadow scattering. "Run!" Daniel roared. They bolted into the trees, fire at their backs. Shadow a streak of fury leading them through. Gunfire chased, but the forest swallowed bullets, and darkness cloaked them. They didn't stop until the first glow of dawn painted the horizon. By morning, state police swarmed Mill Creek. Daniel had forced Callahan into custody. His confession recorded on the radio, broadcast raw and undeniable. The sheriff spat blood and curses as they led him away. Leah sat wrapped in a blanket. Shadow curled protectively at her side. She hadn't spoken since dawn. Her eyes stayed fixed on the tree line, as if she still heard the whispers of the men who hadn't been caught, the ones who had melted back into the woods when fire lit the night. Daniel stood apart, watching the sun bleed over the pines. Exhaustion weighed heavy, but heavier still was the truth. Mill Creek was rotten to its roots. Callahan was just one man. The rest still lingered, waiting, watching. A trooper approached, clipboard in hand. "You'll be a hero for this." Daniel almost laughed. Hero? Heroes didn't walk away carrying names like curses. Didn't wake knowing the grave stretched farther than dawn could touch. He looked down at Shadow, the dog's golden eyes meeting his, steady, unflinching. "No," Daniel murmured, almost to himself. Just the guy who followed his dog into the woods. Leah's hand slipped into his, fragile but warm. She whispered, voice breaking, "If you hadn't—" He squeezed gently, eyes still on the horizon. "But I did." The forest stood silent. No birdsong, no wind, just the weight of everything buried beneath. And for the first time in years, Daniel understood silence wasn't empty. It was heavy with the things people chose to hide, and the price of dragging them into the light.